Hey guys, welcome back to the AFC Newsday channel. Thank you so much for coming here to watch this video. Really appreciate wherever you've come from. If you followed our Twitter, if you've just seen this on YouTube, it's great to have you here for this special episode of our AFC Newsday Premier League preview. It would be great if you could subscribe to the channel. If you can like the video, leave a comment. It would be great to have you here to stick around to see more of our content, because we are hoping that we will continue to be able to use the great studios up in London whenever we go, and get more special guests on. So please do, if you can, drop a like on the video, subscribe, turn the notification bell on as well if you can. That would be brilliant, so you're notified whenever we upload and you don't miss anything. But without further ado, please sit back, relax, and enjoy the video. And if you're not already, make sure you're following everyone on Twitter in the link in the description. So thank you very much. Enjoy the video. Hello, welcome back to the AFC Newsday podcast. My name's Dan, and thank you so much for sticking around here on the channel. We've got our Premier League preview for the season, and you might be thinking, we're in a bit of a different surroundings, some different backgrounds, but we've got to say a big thank you to the guys at ID Studios who have lended us their studio for today. Matt, welcome. How are you, my friend? You good?
Really good, thank you. Really excited for this special episode.
It's great to have you here for the AFC Newsday Premier League preview special episode, and we've got some guests on. We're going to have some rolling subs, I think is a good way to put it when we get into this episode. But first of all, to introduce our guests for the start, we've got Rohan and we've got Raf. Boys, you good?
Buzzing, mate, buzzing. Football's back. Pre-season was good, but now it's kind of getting back to the thick of it, and we go again for the title.
Going for the title, you said it already.
Going for the title, mate. That's what we've got to do. We went close last season, but now there's an expectation for us to, actually win it. So, yeah, I'm buzzing. I'm looking forward to it.
Raf, you feeling the same, going for the title next season?
Going for the title. We almost did it last season, so now it's time to build on from that, and hopefully, create more special moments at the Emirates, especially. Yeah.
100%. Matt, how are you feeling heading into the season, mate? You looking forward to? We've discussed it a bit in our episode so far, but how are you feeling? As we get closer to the start of the season, that Nottingham Forest game. What are your overall feelings so far?
Yeah, I'm really excited for the season. Obviously, a disappointing end to the season, but this season, obviously the new signing of Declan Rice, Kai Havertz, Curran Timber is obviously very exciting. And I think when you look at where Arsenal went wrong last season, you look at areas of depth and injuries, which, of course, William Saliba's particularly. So the fact that we've brought in Yuri and Timber to kind of redress that issue is really big. And I think when you mask any holes or any issues you have, that goes a long way towards a very, very good season from Arsenal to go that next step further and go and win the Premier League title. And it's an adaptation year for a few other teams around us. Most notably City, they've lost quite a few big players, so it'll be interesting to see if that affects them. Obviously, just coming off the treble as well will be interesting. But I'm really looking forward to the season. A lot of high hopes, a lot of expectations in all competitions, and just can't wait to get going, really.
Nice one. I've got to say, boys, I've been looking at some of Arsenal's content recently, and I don't know if you've seen these new behind the scenes first day kind of things for the new signings. And I don't know if you saw Yuri and Timber's one, but Arsenal have got this wall now in the training ground of special golden moments. And I wanted to get your golden moments from last season, because some of Arsenal's ones, of course, it's going to come up, isn't it? Reece Nelson's goal against Bournemouth. I know you boys had a good day there.
That was ridiculous.
And then, some big saves from Aaron Ramsdale throughout the course of the season. I just wanted to get your golden moments from last season. We're not going to reflect too much on last campaign, but Rohan, starting with yourself, what are your golden moments from last season?
I think the obvious one is that Reece Nelson one, especially when I was with Raf at the time as well, and someone else, and it was just, I remember that time I went to him when we had the corners. I just can't see it happening today. And then when it was Reece who stepped up, and off his weaker foot as well, by the way, to finish it. And that's someone who I'd always watch when I was at uni during the academy days. I'd always be tuning in to Nelson, and it was like a special moment for me. But actually, I'd say the other special moment for me was Martinelli's goal against Liverpool after the first minute.
Oh, man, that was incredible.
That was incredible. Yeah. I was just watching that at home, and it's just, for me, the game against Liverpool was so big because over the years, obviously in Arteta's first half season, he beat Klopp both in the Community Shield, at the Emirates in the 2-1 win, where Nelson actually had a really good game in that one as well, and in the Carabao Cup. But Liverpool have always had this edge against Arsenal. So I felt like that game at the Emirates was so crucial for us to win, and for us to take the lead after, 1 minute. And the way that we kind of built from the back, and then Erdegaard plays that ball to Martinelli, that for me was up there, and the Xhaka one against Spurs.
Yes,
being at the ground. So, but those would probably be my moments.
Golden moment, Raf?
I think for me, it's the Man United match at home, where obviously Katie got the last minute and oh my god, and that's where I got that picture as well. But but that moment, just beating Man United, last minute winner, and then I just saw like a couple people just like crying around me, just like tears of joy. And I seen like Gunnar Blog running down the stairs. He's running up and down the stairs. There's just like, all sorts happening. Yeah, and it was like a match where I took like two of my mates who hadn't been to an Arsenal match previously, so that was like new for them, and it was obviously a special moment. So I think for me, obviously Rohan's mentioned quite the highlights already, so I had to pick something different. So that's for me. For me, it's the Man United match.
Matt, you able to add anything else to that, or have they kind of mentioned all of them so far?
I think specific moment-wise, yeah, those are the huge moments. But in terms of match, that Spurs game I think was huge, because the fortunes we've had against Spurs at Spurs recently has been awful. It's always been a thing in the North London derby that the home team wins all the time, more or less. And for us to go to Tottenham, win 2-0, completely outplay them for the first 30 minutes and manage the rest of the game and win convincingly was really, really big. And I think that was a huge part of where mentality-wise is really important, and we're no longer fearing those big stadiums, and we're turning our fortunes at grounds which we've previously come unstuck in.
Only Anfield and Old Trafford to go next season then, and the Etihad.
The Etihad, it's the big one. That's the one.
Definitely. Matt, sticking with you, mate. If we're talking next season, then what are your minimum expectations for you going into this campaign? You know, if this is our Premier League season preview, what are your minimum? What do you expect Arsenal to at least do this coming campaign?
I don't want to put it to like you have to do this, but I'd say definitely for me in the league, second place is kind of like the minimum for me. I don't think there should be a reason that falls below. I know some people have gone a bit outlandish with Arsenal and their predictions, but that always happens. And then in all competitions, I think it's very much a case of going really far in all competitions. I mean, you look at the squad we have, is superb in pretty much every position. So many players who can cover in so many different roles, which is so useful when you want to compete on all fronts. And I think, of course, Arsenal fell short in the Europa League last season, which, to be honest, I don't disagree being a bad idea, considering even how we fell apart, it would have been even worse. So there's that. But the Cups, obviously the Champions League will be massive to be back in that for the first time in however many years. So that'll be massive. But yeah, just compete fully on all fronts, very minimum second in the league, and hopefully win it. And
hopefully win it. There you go. That would be nice, wouldn't it? Raf, do you want to see Arsenal win a trophy this season? Is that I think
that's like a bare minimum at this point, because it's been quite a long time since we won a trophy. It's been 3-4 years now, probably, since the FA Cup. Yeah, obviously I would like to see us, challenge for the league again. As Matt mentioned, at minimum be second, but obviously we're looking to improve on that. And I think just another thing is to make sure we beat Man City at least once, because we didn't do it a single time last season. And if you're trying to win the league, you're not going to really go that far if you can't beat Man City even once, even if it's at home or away. I don't care where it is. Just we need to make sure we beat them once, to actually give us a chance of like at least competing for the league or winning the league. So yeah, obviously, as you mentioned, a trophy would be nice as well. The FA Cup or something. Obviously, the Premier League is the main one everyone's looking at. So yeah, I think a trophy is the bare minimum for this season at least.
Nice. Rohan, Arsenal back in the Champions League this year. I said Europa League on the last episode, didn't I? I had a brain moment. But Arsenal back in the Champions League, incredibly exciting. What are your expectations for Arsenal in the competition? Do you want to see Arsenal go deep into the competition? Are you not too fussed? Do you think it's just if they go well in one of the cup competitions, or in the Champions League in particular? What do you want to see from?
I think we have to definitely stamp our authority on it. It's been a while since we've been there, but at the same time, there is this expectation that the mindset is changing at Arsenal. Last season when we're considering what the objectives were, it was to finish in the top 4, and we had a league title challenge. Towards the end where we did fall off due to many different reasons, but now, this season, it's a different mindset. There's the expectation that we compete for the league again, but also in the Champions League, that we can show that we can compete against these teams in Europe. And I would say quarterfinals, as a minimum, would be a really good start to give ourselves the platform before we go again the following season. So, and in terms of the league, last season, I think sometimes we get too fixated on positions. It's about points for me. This season, it's about getting closer to 90. and that should be the objective and the mindset. And this is the reality of the situation. When you're coming against Guardiola, who's only lost 3 league titles in his whole career, as a manager, these are the points that you have to try and hit, and that should be the objective for next season, both to stamp our authority in the Champions League, win a cup. I think we've got the squad to do so now, to rotate, and that's something that Arteta will get better at, because when you consider the squad that we have now, it is players that he has signed, and obviously in the league, try and get closer. And the point that Raf makes about City, we have to take points from them. That's where we lost the league last season, not in those games against some of the lesser sides. You will drop points against those teams. It's about the team that you're competing against. You can't give them 6 points. So that's...
How excited are you just to be back in the Champions League as well, though? Just
it's been too long, mate. It's been too... I can just think back that Ludogorets moment with the Ozil goal, with the El Neni assist, and it's been too long. And a club like Arsenal, you can't be in the Europa League for the amount of time that we've been in it. So it's just good to get back into it, and we have to make a good impression, and because I look back at last season, some of the games in the knockout rounds, and I'm thinking Arsenal could easily beat some of these sides with our strongest team, and that's what makes it quite jealous for me last year. And this year we have the opportunity to do so, and to kind of show Europe that this is a team that it wasn't a fluke season. The metrics will tell you that all the way back to Boxing Day 2020. Always go back to that reference point. And now it's about showing it in Europe.
And I just hope that we can actually show people that we can do it in Europe as well, because even when the last time we played in the Champions League was 2017, even a couple of years prior to that, we kind of went outside from the Champions League. We kind of regularly got knocked out in the round of 16s, never really made it past all that kind of stuff, and kind of got battered by a few bigger teams like Barcelona, Bayern. So for me now, going back into the Champions League, I think it's obviously not only about getting to the quarterfinals and all of that. It's showing the rest of Europe that we can compete, and we deserve to be here and all that kind of stuff. And that will also help the reputation of Arsenal, because it has been damaged a lot over the last 6 years when you're not in the Champions League and when you're not in those big matches and big competitions. So I just hope Arsenal can get back to that again.
Because it's the Champions League games are what everyone watches, isn't it? These are the games that everyone. Yeah, if you guys want to do a quick rolling substitution. Matt, everyone watches these games, don't they?
It's where narratives come from, really. So how good a player is, how bad a player is. People often judge off the Champions League. They'll see one game and be like, X player is really good, or Y player isn't very good, just off that one game. But that's how the media is nowadays, and how the Champions League is viewed. So it's, as you say, massive that we do adapt to that really well and stamp our authority.
100%. Incredibly exciting times. Boys,
hello.
Welcome. We've had a substitution here. We can also welcome Curran and Evan to the podcast. Boys, you good?
Very good, very good. Yeah, not bad.
Excited about the new season too?
Just trying to get out of the rain, to be honest. That's the thing.
Oh, boys. I wanted to talk about the recruitment that Arsenal have made so far, coming to all of you on this one. We've seen the signings of Kai Havertz, Declan Rice, Yuri and Timber, and that's all we've got at the time of recording so far. There might be David Raya added to the mix potentially, but with what's happened so far, Curran, I'll come to you first on this one. How impressed have you been with Arsenal's business so far? Just eclipsing £200 million. Fairly impressed with it so far?
Yeah, I mean, you see how other clubs are moving, and you're seeing how the market is kind of activating now. We've got most of our business done. You look at West Ham; they haven't bought anyone. We're actually moving like a serious club, and we're moving to that 200, maybe 250 million pound mark. When I don't think we've seen that from us ever. I don't think that's been the case. So, if you're looking at where we're going to go with this squad now, I've said it for years. It's going to be about raising the floor, and now we're looking at ceiling raises. We're looking at the likes of Declan Rice, which is quite clearly, I mean, the quality speaks for itself. So definitely something that I'm very, very impressed by. Impressed by how Edu's done his business. The talent identification that's occurred early in the window, and not in the window, early in the window, it's early in the season as well. We're looking at January, February, March. You're making contacts with players and then getting it done early, so you can embed them in pre-season, get them going, get them ready for the start of the season. You're looking at people having their concerns about Declan, and saying, what if he can't be the 6 because he's played a double pivot, he's not played a single pivot before. Well, now he's had a pretty good pre-season with us now. So it gives him that extra time to give him that extra boost going into the season. So, yeah, very happy with our business.
Evan, are you Do you think there's more that needs to be done still to the squad this window? Are you happy with what's happened so far, but still think there's more to come?
Yeah, very happy with what's been done. I think to keep going, I think sales need to speed up a little bit. I think there's a lot of baggage in the squad. You've got Sambi, Patino, Holding, and more players who just need to find a new home, really. And yeah, I mean, that's probably the one criticism you could have of Edu in his time at the club so far. Often we haven't got what we really should be getting for players who are heading out.
We've been cancelling contracts and that kind of thing.
Yeah. Exactly, yeah. So I mean, if we can start shifting some players, maybe get a few more in, a couple more maybe, Raya, maybe Kudus, if that's possible, I think it'd be a really, really good window.
For sure. And Matt, are you kind of along the same line? Do you think that, good so far, maybe a few more? Do you think, if the season started tomorrow and the window closed today, would you be happy with what's happened so far?
Incredibly happy, and to be honest, I don't want us to go crazy with incomings because I don't think we need to. I think the Raya stuff has caught me by surprise, but I didn't think Turner would be going so quickly, or
No, I didn't either, to be fair. No.
That would have to move to happen. And obviously, yeah, as you say, on the sales front, I think in the past it's difficult because Arsenal finished 8th or finished 5th or whatever it is, and they don't really have too much leverage. And then the players they're trying to offload on players with, a huge reputation of being a huge marketable asset, which makes things a lot harder to move them on, and on high wages as well, which is I guess it just shows how the club was run previously, signing older players on high wages. I mean, you look at Nicolas Pepe now, of course, it's just unfortunate it's not worked out for him, and there's links with Besiktas today, I think, but that is kind of a prime example of someone a bit older who, it's just not quite worked out for him. We need to offload, but there's not an easy market for them because of the wages. But I'm very happy with what we've done so far in the window. And I don't think really we need to address too much more. If we were to get Kudus, I wouldn't complain. Of course, the Saka depth side of things.
Of course you wouldn't complain. Lovely player.
I mean, you're not wrong, but I don't want us to go like crazy on incomings. I think it's very much now at the club a case of we sign a player because the player's left, not we sign a player to add to, the team, which is kind of how it was before, which I think is a great sign of a self-sustainable team who's absolutely stacked in every way, in every position, with multiple players who can cover multiple roles, which is really exciting. So yeah, really happy. And if we were to have a few more incomings, of course Raya now seems not like a formality, but personal terms have been agreed, and it just seems relatively likely now that will happen. And obviously the Kudus links still in and about. There's been stuff about a right back. I don't really want a right back, but we'll have to see.
Arsenal are pretty fine in the right back position. You got Ben White, Timber, Tomiyasu can play there. You've got more than enough options, haven't you?
Yeah, I think it's having a different style. I think Arteta wants to have,
someone that offers something different.
Yeah, every dynamic in every position, so we can flip dynamics or we can change up, and we can be as unpredictable as ever. So trying to suss us out or anything like that from last season is pretty much impossible. But yeah, really happy. If we do make a few more signings, then happy to, but also don't want to go crazy in the window.
Sure, it's a topical point at the moment. Yeah, you've got Evan. You mentioned player surplus to requirements at the moment. I'd add following Balogun to that as well, and potentially Eddie Nketiah. When you look at Arsenal's forward options, Curran, what happens with Eddie and Balogun? Because at the moment we've been told that Balogun's almost maybe feeling priced out of a move away from Arsenal. Arsenal want about 40 million, 50 million, depending on what you read. But do you think, Arsenal in a strong position? It looks like he wants to go, but would you still want to keep him? Do you see it happening, or do you think he just does end up leaving to maybe one of the Milan clubs?
One of the Milan clubs. I mean, West Ham. Again, I mean, we could settle it and have Rice 40 million if they really wanted it, and get 60 out of them or something like this, because it is a Premier League move. They would be able to sell him at a premium. But the thing with Balogun is I think a lot of the players, especially in that 9 position, they want to start because they have that arrogance. They want to play. They want to score goals. They want to be the guy. That's how they thrive, and that's why he was doing so well at Rem. If you look at the Middlesbrough loan just before Rem, he was kind of in and out. Chris Wilder was playing that 3-5-2 at Middlesbrough, and it was a bit like You could see the talent was there. And even the Brentford game when he played for us, like there were moments that he looked lively. And I've been a big fan of his, even from the youth days. But what I've learned over the last couple of years is that with youth talent, youth projection, you're projecting, and these projections rely on too many factors to go all in on players when they haven't played first team football. And now we're looking at a case with Balogun is he's done very well in France, and he's a victim of his own success in a way, because you look at say for example a Pender going to Leipzig, for example, which is around 40 million euros if I'm not mistaken, maybe a little bit more. Balogun's performed better than him last season in Ligue 1. To say that we're pricing him out of a move when for similar talent we're asking for similar money, I don't really get that. I think that as usual Italy are broke, and I was saying this on the tube with Evan earlier, that you don't know what's happening with them. You never know what's going on because they lie consistently. Their media is just ridiculous. We all remember the Marzio tweet about Rice going to City.
Oh man, my head was gone.
Yeah, no,
his head was gone.
Literally, for about 4 to 6 months, I was not fussed about that move at all. And then that Marzio tweet hit.
It nearly ruined my holiday. That's how much
it was. But this is my point. And when you look at Balogun, you're looking at talent that really understands what he needs to do in terms of movement, in terms of getting into the box. He can be a bit wasteful at times. I think he had the second highest XG for him produced with his shots in Ligue 1, and was behind Lacazette with in the goal tally. So there is maybe a little bit of an XG drop off from the actual goals. But what you will say about him is he links up play very well. He drops. He can shift wide. He's very good at running the channels as well. So there is definitely a massive talent there. And I think that you have to, as fans, we have to realize that saying that you want someone sold doesn't mean you think they're a bad player. I really like following Balogun. It's just the fact is that his value is highest at the moment. And to really capitalize on what we have at the club, we need to produce sales. And then by selling an asset, like I was saying earlier in the window, getting £100 million acquisition in Declan Rice shows Europe we're recovering as a club in terms of how we do business. But selling a player for market value is the same thing. It's the same thing, because you look at how we handled the Xhaka sale, we got good money for Xhaka, and it shows that we're not looking to be taken for mugs. We have a squad now that if you're trying to buy from us, you have to realize this is a high performance squad now. We're not 8th. We're challenging for titles. So there's no reason to be, sort of on the fence. Okay, we'll take about 10 million, 15 million for players. We need to start getting players. And the thing is, we're at a point that Matt made about having a self-sustaining squad. If you're looking at that, and you're looking at the amount of youth that we're going to start producing, a lot of these guys are going to have to start being sold for profit at points. And not because like the Chelsea model were doing that sort of thing, but because the fact is, at this moment in time, we don't have the space for them. You're looking at someone like, I don't know, Patino that you mentioned. He's just not going to get the time here, and we can sell him for pure profit. So why not?
Do you see any world in which, I'm going to ask all of you this, but do you see any world in which Balogun and Nketiah are both still at the club?
I didn't even mention Eddie. I forgot about Eddie. Balogun, no, I just don't see it. I think that he needs to start. He's earned it. He's earned a spot at a top European club. So no, Eddie. We had this in the group chat in the morning. I like Eddie. I think I'm the only one that likes Eddie around.
No, not
I want to keep him. I think that you'll struggle to, and this is the thing I find with the right wing conversation. You struggle to find a right wing that's better than Jesus to back up Saka. I just don't see it. The reason why I wouldn't mind Kudus is if Balogun goes, Kudus can fill in the right wing spot, the left central midfield spot, and if we were to sell Eddie as well, which I don't really think we should, but if we were, then he can also play centre forward as well. So it's kind of like a right-sided Trossard kind of dynamic.
Sure.
So it could work, but I don't see any reason to sell Eddie. He looks like he's someone that kids can look up to as well in the squad. Like if you're looking to bring an Ethan through or a Miles through, like he has the mentality to really push himself. So yeah, I don't see any reason to sell Eddie at all.
Sure. Evan, do you feel that do you feel that Balogun will probably end up moving on and Eddie would stay? And where do you think Eddie fits in the the pecking order as well as far as forward options comes, because you've also got the likes of, obviously Jesus will be the main starter. I think we can all agree on if everyone's fit. You've also got Trossard, who did a good job there last season. Kai Havertz can play there. Throw anyone else at me if I've forgotten anyone, but you know, you've got Eddie. I think would probably be in and around that conversation. Do you think Eddie there's a place for him and enough minutes for him next season?
I think his minutes will be limited, and I think he's got to accept that, really. I think Trossard showed us that he can replace Jesus a lot better than Eddie last season, and obviously Eddie stayed because he was promised to be the number 2. But I don't think for the future of the team, and especially next season, that we can really go into the season with Eddie as our number 2 striking option. But I think there will be games in the Champions League you could probably start Eddie in. Obviously, you'll get the League Cup and the FA Cup. But yeah, in terms of Balogun, I think it's likely he goes. I just can't see him staying. I can't see him accepting being a number 2 or even just competition with Eddie.
3.
Yeah, and and I think while his value is high, we've got to move him on, really, if anyone. But I think, like what Curran said, at some point you have to stop lowering your prices. You have to stop accepting less than what players are worth, because you're never going to be able to sell high if you always sell low, because clubs will keep coming in expecting us to lower our prices, and it will just never happen.
Sure.
And I think Balogun goes this summer. I'm not sure where to currently, but I could see a West Ham coming in.
West Ham.
Possibly a Brighton, if seeing Undav's going.
Yes, yeah.
But yeah, let's see.
And Matt, I'll come to you on that one as well. Flo Balogun, what do you think the future holds for him? And what do you think it holds for Eddie as well, I guess, is also part of the question.
I think it's as simple with Balogun as the squad's moved on, and what he needs and what he deserves and what he demands is something we just simply can't offer him, which is a starting spot as a number 9, or even at the very least a number 2, being like a certified number 2, you know, like not having a Trossard or a Havertz or an Nketiah who could take that away from him. And I think you've got to see it as, is Balogun that Osimhen type long term for us, or is he that player who, you know, you would keep instead of signing a £100 million striker, for example, in the future? And I don't think the answer is that. And you also can't just stockhold players in case they do become, you know, of course Balogun's performing at a really high level and had a brilliant season in France, but you can't stockpile him just in case he becomes a complete world beater. Yeah. It's not in the player's best interest. And I think development is really important with him as well. You know, him playing week in, week out, as I think Curran spoke about the Middlesbrough loan, and, you know, comparing it to the Reims loan, where he did have a manager who put his arm around him and stuck with him every week, and he ended up being one of France's top scorers, which says a lot about him and the quality of player we're dealing with. And ultimately, another really important part about his value is the US side of things. There was a huge deal made about, you know, the marketability side of things, of him joining the US national team instead of, you know, the English one, for example. And that's a huge deal, and there are a lot of American owners in sport, and he's a very marketable player, and that's another thing which just adds more money to a player of that profile, of that age, of that caliber, you know, someone who can score 20 plus goals in France in their first competitive season, more or less. And so I just don't really see a way that Balogun does stay. And to be honest, I don't think a 40 to 50 million pound price tag is an unrealistic ask for him at all. And I think if we were selling less, then we genuinely would be getting taken for mugs, if you will. And then on Eddie, I really, really like Eddie Nketiah. I think he's a different option. His all-round game under Arteta is developed, not more than anyone else in the team, but developed to an unbelievable amount. If you watch the games, I couldn't give you an exact game, but pre-Sunderland in the Carabao Cup, a game like that, the quality difference, you know, his all-round game, his hold-up play, is just absolute light and day from now. And I think in the back end of the season, when we were trying to get top 4, I thought against West Ham he was our best player. Even in games like Newcastle and Spurs, he was our best player, even in bad times. When he came in as well, in a title race, let's not forget, of course, you know, profile-wise, he was different to Jesus. and that's why Trossard was always such a good fit instantly when he did come to the club. But he scored those 2 huge goals against United. He scored that lovely goal against West Ham. He was really good up until he was playing with an injury and then just wasn't quite himself again. So from a player perspective, I completely understand if he wants to move on and be a starter elsewhere, because he deserves to be a starter at a good Premier League team, because I really do believe he can start for a lot of Premier League teams. And as the window, closes down slowly, a lot of teams become more desperate that they haven't addressed their issues, and they will start, paying Arsenal. They have 2 strikers who are some of the best options on the market for what they're after, and I think they're very low risk signings really for them, even with the money, for a lower Premier League side. So that has a big factor. But if Eddie's happy being that rotational player, play off the left, play down the middle, and just being that really useful squad player who's not even necessarily a second choice, then brilliant. But I also, as I was saying about the players' careers being best hand here, and what Curran was saying about the academy side of things, is you can't stockhold these players, and at the end of the day you will sell a lot of them for a profit. And if that ends up being the case with Eddie, then so be it, and I wish him the absolute best. But if he stays, I'd be very happy for that too, and I really think he's a really good asset at the club, and he's improved a lot, and Arteta does really like him, and how much he has improved in his work rate, his mentality speaks for itself.
Sure. Raf and Rohan, I will ask you just briefly, because I do want to move the conversation on from this, but Eddie Nketiah, do you see him still being at the club in 2 years' time?
In 2 years' time?
In 2 years' time?
I don't see it, no.
Rohan? No. Fair enough. Interesting. Very interesting. I wanted to talk about midfield now, because I think it's one of the most interesting positions within this Arsenal setup. It can very much determine it just determines how the side plays, the engine room of the team, and we've seen a lot of change since last season. Granit Xhaka, who's been a name that's always been in and around the midfield for the last however many years, has now left the club, and Arsenal have got Declan Rice, Thomas Partey, Kai Havertz to speak, Jorginho, El Nenny's still there as well. Trying to think any more kind of deeper midfielders I've forgotten. I think that's pretty much all of them there. And for this coming season, we're looking at what we've seen so far in pre-season, and we're looking at Mikel might be looking to switch up the midfield a little bit, and how they're going to play. And I know, of course, in that United game, he had Havertz, Odegaard and Rice playing a bit deeper. Thomas Partey wasn't back at that point. But I wanted to ask you both about midfield combinations. Rohan, I'll come to you first on this one, because for me personally, I'd like to see Thomas Partey, Declan Rice and Martin Odegaard. I think that would be a very solid midfield for next season. Yeah. What's your take on midfield? Do you think that maybe a lone 6 and 2 8s will be something Mikel will look to try and do? And we'll probably learn a lot from when this episode comes out, having seen the Emirates Cup and the Community Shield. Yeah. But what's your predictions for...
That's it, mate. It's going to be these next 2 games against Monaco and City in the Community Shield that will ultimately dictate what we're going to be doing predominantly next season. Because so far in pre-season, when you're considering the continuity that we have seen in the team, it's only been Gabriel and Saliba. Those have played every single game together as a partnership. Everything else, we've been altering the dynamics and we're trying to find different combinations to make us a little bit more unpredictable in how we kind of use certain players. Now, I think the common narrative is that Arsenal are going to go with this Rice, Odegaard, Havertz midfield. And if that is the case, then fine. But we're obviously going to have to see it in the next couple of games for 45 minutes at the very least. But I do like that Partey, Rice, Odegaard combination, because I think when you're talking about a transition...
Feels like a bit more security, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And that's where I think... I put a tweet out recently where I said that's your insurance policy. When you're playing against a Man City, what would I want for Arsenal to set up that gives me the most confidence that we can be tactically astute, technically astute and physically astute? And it would be that combination. Now, then you ask yourself, well, Arsenal spent 65 million on Kai Havertz, but... ultimately, this is a team in which, I don't think we should be focusing too much on the transfer fee. He's going to be looking at the best combinations that's going to give us the best possible chance of being able to beat a team like City. Because if you think of it off the ball, what kind of block is going to give you more security? An Odegaard, Declan Rice deeper combination, or a Partey and Rice deeper combination? Yeah. It's the latter. But then when you look at games against the lesser sides, that's where you do incorporate a Havertz and Odegaard, and you have the opportunity to do so. Now, Havertz's role on paper is the same as Xhaka, but in terms of the dynamics, it's not the same. It's completely different. And you've seen how we have been playing when Havertz has been in the team pre-season. I actually think he's had a really good pre-season personally. I think even the Man United game, I saw a lot of positive signs, particularly that second half, that run that he made with the Odegaard cross from the half space, and you can see the blindside run that Havertz makes, and that's something that he's going to give us. And last season, Arsenal, in terms of efficiency in the box and the numbers we get into those areas, we're the best in Europe. So that's where someone like Havertz will really give us a lot of quality. But in the big games, having that box of Saliba, Gabriel, Partey, Rice, in Europe, there are not many teams who have as strong of a core as that. 100%, and that's where I'd hope in the Community Shield we'd go for something like that personally, because I think that would give us the best chance of beating Man City. And I actually think this Community Shield game has a lot of importance, because we do need to try and get some sort of advantage over City. I think we had a little mini win in the transfer market in terms of getting Declan Rice over the line. Yeah. And it'll be good on the pitch to actually, get a victory over them before it all starts properly. So, yeah.
Sure. Yeah. No, I mean, I agree with you there 100%. I think, like I said, Rice, Partey and Odegaard would be a midfield that you'd see dominate against a lot of teams. Exactly. And in the big games, it's about dominating the midfield, isn't it? And it's something
the engine room dictates the result.
100%. Always. And it's something that in the big games we haven't seen Arsenal do.
And just quickly there, just look at last season, right? And this is where Xhaka's importance isn't spoken about enough. Since the start of the 21-22 season, but not just last season before, when Xhaka and Partey have been in the team, Arsenal statistically hit close to around about 85 to 90 points worth of quality over a season. Sure. And you would want a transition that is not as massive to that. And having a Declan Rice and a Thomas Partey in those types of games gives you that confidence. So that's fine.
Sure. I mean, you touched on it. I want to talk about Kai Havertz because I know you said earlier that off air that you were thinking that Kai Havertz you'd like to see him in a more forward role.
Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about that. Why do you think that he offers more quality? We've seen in Chelsea, of course, that he's almost been wasted up front and misses a lot of chances. What do you think's different about Arsenal?
I think that season though is more of an anomaly, because if you look at Havertz's career, both at Leverkusen and in the early years at Chelsea, statistically in terms of XG, he matches quite well. So I would say last season it's more down to a confidence as to why he was missing chances. But when you're considering a player who makes the runs that he does, I think only Haaland made more runs into the box last season than Havertz. And that's the type of player you have. He's a runner. He's a very powerful runner as well. And when you consider the way that Jesus plays in terms of him dropping deep, being that kind of +1 in midfield when the game requires it, but also that wide overload he provides in that combination with Martinelli, and also towards the back end of last season with Saka as well, we saw in the Wolves game. Havertz can do that. If you look at the performance that always comes out to me with Havertz is the Liverpool Carabao Cup final game, where he played pretty much the Jesus role against Van Dijk and Matip, and he had a fantastic game. If Mason Mount was remotely efficient in that game, Chelsea would have won it. They would have won, and Havertz would have got a lot of the praise. He has a lot of potential there. Now, the only thing with Havertz, which is where Mikel will have to work with him, but what I have confidence in Mikel in terms of this aspect that he lacks is because he's done it with Nketiah, he's done it with Odegaard, he's done it with Martinelli, in terms of when a player is behind you and he's making physical contact, Havertz struggles. But so did Nketiah, so did Odegaard, so did Martinelli. They've all developed into very secure players in those scenarios. And I think Havertz, with the frame that he has, he should be a lot more physical. And I think you've got a lot of tools there to work with for him to play that role. And that's where I think Jesus on the right-hand side is the way in which we're going to manage Saka, because I personally don't think that the market is great for a right winger. And that's where I think Havertz has that market opportunity where, yes, on paper, he's probably going to play the majority of his minutes in midfield, but I think he gives you the option of the front line as well.
He's a tall guy, Raf, isn't he, Kai Havertz?
Yeah.
It took me by surprise how tall he is. He's like 6'4", something like that. But
6'3",
yeah,
6'4".
I think
6'4".
Yeah, it's something that Arsenal might try and utilise next season. Going a bit more direct with balls from deep, maybe.
Sorry.
What your thoughts on that? Yeah.
I think for me personally, if you're going to ignore the big games of the season, I feel like with the smaller games, like the mid-table games that we play or the relegation teams that we play, we can get away with having someone like Havertz in midfield because we'll have the ball most of the time anyways. But as Rohan mentioned, when you're going into those bigger games against Man City, you want a strong midfield. And say if we do play a midfield of Havertz, Odegaard and Rice, what will end up effectively happening if we don't have the ball when we're in our little 4-4-2 formation, what ends up happening is that Havertz and Jesus are the two players up front, and we end up having Ødegaard and Rice in midfield, which is a totally different midfield from what we've had. And what you're essentially doing is you're blowing up your whole midfield with 2 new players, and a player in Ødegaard who hasn't played that position. He was our pressing trigger last season, and if you're having Havertz in midfield, what you're effectively doing is you're dropping Ødegaard into midfield. So obviously that's a thing Arteta has to consider for the big matches. But I feel like with, at least as I mentioned, with the smaller matches, I think you can get away with Havertz in midfield, and we've obviously seen that even in that midfield position he can find those little pockets and the back post, and find those goals. And obviously if and also Xhaka got, how many goals last season did he get in the Premier League?
Granit Xhaka?
Yeah. A lot of goals.
Yes.
The thing is
7 or 8
from
Yeah.
that position.
Goals,
So
yeah.
if Xhaka can, with his skills, I guess, in the box, get that amount of goals, then we can expect, if Havertz plays that position, to do just as much as him, maybe if not even better.
Sure.
So I think that's where I stand on Havertz.
Sure, interesting. Boys, it's been brilliant talking about this so far. I wanted us to now move on to a more generic kind of conversation. I wanted to ask, I asked you before to prepare some predictions for me.
Oh.
This is where we cook them, boys. This is where we cook them. I wanted to ask you about your Premier League predictions for this coming season, relegation and top 6, okay? Just, if you guys need your chance to get ready, I'm going to come to Matt first. Matt, talk to me. Have you had a chance to? Are you ready to give your predictions?
Yeah.
Okay, Matt. Fire away. Give me first of all. Who's getting relegated this season?
I'm torn between 20th and 19th, but
Okay.
I'm going Luton.
And a little bit of justification as well. Just go on.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going Luton because everyone else is. No, I mean, I think the league is of such a high quality. I don't think they've done too much business, and it seems like a bit of a formality. They go down. Obviously, I know a lot of people put Bournemouth, for example, last season at 20th, and they ended up having a great season.
Cherries are incredible, mate. What a team.
Secret undercover cherry.
No.
But yeah, not quite, is it really the same at all? So I just don't really see too much hope for Luton there.
Okay, Luton.
Which is fair enough. And then Sheffield United,
Okay.
I think losing Iliman Ndiaye, particularly 2 weeks before the season, I think they tweeted
After he just signed a new contract as well.
that's brutal. It's really good player as well. And,
Yeah.
It's their best player.
yeah, exactly. And
Yeah.
I don't think they've signed too much. It seems like they're getting Austin Trusty, which is on topic
Interesting,
with Arsenal.
And Luton might get Patino maybe. Who knows?
We'll have to see. To see.
And who's your third team?
Yeah, and then I think Wolves. I think it's going to be
Wolves.
between Wolves and Fulham, and I think Wolves will drop.
Cool.
Yeah.
Raf, who's getting relegated?
I think I'll agree with Matt for his first 2 predictions. I think Luton and
Luton and Sheffield
will go
United,
down,
yeah.
obviously, as he mentioned. And just to be a bit different, I'll go for West Ham.
West Ham.
West Ham.
Whoa.
I'll go for West
It feels a
Ham.
bit personal,
And-
boys. I don't know about you. It feels like there's some personal kind of hate
Okay,
there.
my justification
I'm ready
today.
for the cooking.
My justification for it today. What's the date today? 3rd of August, 2023, right?
Yeah.
Okay, as of right now,
Second.
2nd of August. There we go. As of right now, West Ham have not made a single signing,
Yeah.
and all that they've done is they've sold their star to Mikel Arteta. That's all. They've done. So that's what they've done so far. So as of right now, looking at their midfield, it's going to be Souček, Paqueta, and
Yeah.
Downs.
Downs.
maybe?
Well, they're currently haggling for James Ward-Prowse as we speak.
Yeah.
They've walked away with that deal.
They've
apparently,
walked
as
away
well,
from
haven't
that.
So
Yeah.
they've said apparently. So we'll
There we
wait and
go.
see if they're
Yeah.
true to their word.
So as of today, 2nd of August, to me it feels like West Ham will go down.
West Ham,
Obviously,
Sheffield United, and Luton.
yeah, that's the prediction for me.
Bold.
Rohan, you going to throw a
I don't
spanner in
think
the works?
I don't think West Ham's a mad shout because I don't think people realise the impact that Declan Rice had on that team.
Yeah.
and
Oh,
how
yeah,
he
that's
carried
really
it.
cool.
Yeah,
How
exactly.
he has
That is a
carried
big
that
elephant
side.
in the room.
Honestly, it's ridiculous.
And they're going to be in the Europa League as well.
Exactly.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
That's a huge point because
Yeah.
the Europa League, the volume of minutes, do that squad have the capability
Mm.
of being able to compete on 2 fronts? I don't think that's a bad shout. I'm actually going to go with Matt's 3. I
Matt's,
really do. Now I haven't really came prepared, to be honest.
Oh, it all comes out now.
I think saying Fulham or Wolves is the more like safer shot.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
It is, but I
Yeah.
think Wolves, they have been pondering in that
I think,
situation.
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I'm going to agree as well.
And the thing
think,
is,
yeah.
the thing is, it's difficult because the transfer window towards the back end always gets really exciting towards
Yep.
the bottom of the table, and
Yeah.
ultimately, what will dictate who stays up for me is goals. It always is. if one of those sides gets a top forward in, who you know can consistently get around 8 to 10 Premier League goals, I think that could be the difference from one of these teams that I think are getting relegated now to staying up and someone else coming down. But I'd say right now, Luton and Sheffield United, for me, I'd say are certainties.
Yeah.
And then it's a case of that third spot, which gets quite interesting. It could be a shock. You never know. Like Leicester last season wasn't bad, but it was a shock though, was it, mate? Yeah, honestly, that final day, it was getting close between Everton and Leicester. But I think, I would go for Luton, Sheffield United, and Wolves.
Moving on, Matt. Top 6 predictions. Shoot.
Arsenal to win the league.
Arsenal to win the league.
City to come second. United to come third. Liverpool to come fourth. Now, I've got Spurs to come fifth and Newcastle to come sixth. And I'm very torn between Newcastle and Spurs. And it wouldn't surprise me if one of them got top 4 again. Because Liverpool, I think, once again, it's a big thing. Because at the time of recording this, they haven't signed Lavia. I think they're looking at alternatives in Brazil. Can't remember his name. But, they haven't signed Lavia. They've sold Fabinho and Henderson.
Yeah.
And they haven't, it's replacements really. They haven't got a left centre-back in. They're a bit of an unpredictable one because obviously they'll score loads of goals, but defensively they are looking intriguing to say the least. I think Spurs under Anger, I think it's the perfect appointment for them. It's one they've needed for a long while. They've tried to cut corners and, try win a trophy one way or another or get success one way or another. But yeah, that's... just laughing because Andre is the name from Liverpool who they're going after. But
there we go.
I was not going to be able to carry on if I didn't just say that because that threw me off.
Right, so Matt, rattle off your top 6 again then for me, please.
Sure. Arsenal, City, United, Liverpool, Spurs, and Newcastle.
Interesting. Raf, top 6, please.
I'll go for Arsenal at first, Man City, Man United, Liverpool, Newcastle and Chelsea.
Interesting. That's the same I've gone for as well, actually.
Yeah.
So there you go.
I feel like Chelsea won't be good enough to get into the Champions League or anything. But
you think Poch will be the difference, though?
Yeah, exactly. I feel like he'll just get them just a bit further along the line, just to get into the European spots or something like that. And obviously that's what they'd be wishing for as well after the season they've had.
Sure. And Rohan, top 6, please.
It's difficult because it's still there's still time in the window.
Yeah, exactly.
It's still I think it is very difficult to make a bold claim. But as you said, as of today, 2nd of August, the Arsenal top, City, United. I think Erik ten Hag's a good coach, very good coach. I think some of the business that they've done is questionable, but I think the continuity that they do have will get them third. And then it gets interesting because Liverpool, even though they've made these 2 signings in Szoboszlai and McAllister, they've sold Fabinho. So that's a completely different midfield. That's a massive change. And a change to what they have been doing predominantly on the Jurgen Klopp in terms of how they've operated. I think stylistically they're going to be playing a slightly different way as well. So I think they might just miss out. And I'm going to go for Chelsea.
Interesting.
But that also depends on if they can get an anchor.
Yes.
To play alongside Enzo.
Well, if they sign Caicedo.
And this is where I'm thinking it's difficult to make a bold claim right now, but if Chelsea get that anchor, I think they will be one of the dark horses to finish there. And then I'd go Liverpool and then Newcastle and Spurs to finish 7th, but I think Spurs will have a season which you can see progression.
Sure.
Now, I don't think we'll banter them because it'll be another season which has been probably a failure in terms of trophies, but I think you'll be able to see more progression under Spurs this season in terms of style under their new coach. So that's what I'd go for now, but it could change.
I think there's quite a few unpredictable teams there as well. Chelsea particularly, as you say, top 4. I mean, I think they'll be in and around there, so it'll be interesting. Obviously, they've spent a lot of money on.
If Chelsea get a Caicedo, let's say, hypothetically speaking, then that changes it.
On paper, they have a really good squad, but they should have a good squad because they spent a lot of
money.
And
then the counter argument to that is, again, they've got a lot of players who it will take time for them to build chemistry and partnerships and familiarity. But with Pochettino, I think the football will be a lot better there as well. So.
And when there's 2 weeks left, or not 2 weeks, sorry, when it gets closer and closer towards the window ending, and if a team does lose, their opening game or something like that, in a big way or a concerning way, then that might just make them pull the plug and pay more money than they wanted to. So it's a very unknown entity at the minute.
We've gone through our top 6 and our relegation candidates for this season. Switch up a little bit. I want to get a surprise team and a surprise player for you this season in the Premier League. Curran, I'll come to you first, please.
Surprise team?
Surprise team. Who do you think will overperform? And an individual that might be a surprise package to catch everyone by surprise.
Individual... Wow. I think maybe someone like Julio Enciso from Brighton. I think he's going to be someone that will be on a lot of people's radars coming up. In terms of overperforming team, like genuinely, I think that maybe someone even like a Wolves, you know what I mean? Like it depends, because it goes.
Really, we have them nailed on for relegation.
This is the thing. It depends on what Rohan was saying about the last period of the window kind of deciding relegation. But as of today, they look pretty much down to me. But the window that they could have could really propel them going forward. And they've had a lot of FFP constraints. Keeping someone like Pedro Neto, for example, could really help them as well. But Wolves, maybe. Bournemouth is a good shout as well. Bournemouth maybe. I think Bournemouth, because I think that they have a new coach. I think there's
Andoni Iraola.
Yes, he seems someone that is very highly regarded in Spain. So maybe Bournemouth actually is a better shout.
Interesting. And Evan, just as well, yours, please.
I think I'd go for Aston Villa.
Aston Villa, okay.
In terms of overperforming teams, I think they're expected to do quite well with the signings they've made, and we all know Unai Emery. He's a bit unpredictable at times, but I think they're building a really good squad. I can see them going far in the conference.
Sure.
And I think they'll be pushing towards that top 6.
And an individual?
Individual, I think I'll go with Nicholas Jackson.
Interesting, Chelsea striker.
I really like what I've seen from him in pre-season. I think he looks really quick and really good on the ball. I think he'll do well for them.
Very interesting. Well, thank you very much, boys. Really appreciate your time. And again, big thank you to ID Studios for lending us with their brilliant set and personalising it with some Arsenal stuff. Matt, thank you very much. Everyone, please make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel. Any support is much appreciated. Do comment down below. Follow us on socials if you want to. Everyone that's featured will be in the description. But thank you so much. Please like the video, subscribe, and we'll catch you again very soon.